There's a moment every man remembers inside prison. The moment he realizes the system won't protect him, and the rules he thought mattered on the outside don't mean a thing. Marcus Stone Alvarez learned that lesson his first week in. It was lunchtime in the yard, 300 inmates moving like wolves in circles. Then one wrong glance, one wrong word, and the whole place exploded. Marcus ducked as fists flew and shivs flashed. A guard shouted for lockdown, but no one listened. Someone grabbed Marcus from behind and slammed him into the ground. His face hit the dirt. A voice growled in his ear. "You don't follow the rules, you don't survive here." That was Reaper, the man who ran C Block, the unspoken judge and executioner inside Stonegate Prison. Marcus was bleeding, terrified, and seconds from blacking out. But before that boot hit his neck again, he made a silent promise. He would learn every rule, and he'd never be the victim again. To understand how Marcus ended up in that yard, let's rewind to his first day inside Stonegate Correctional. When the prison transport bus stopped, the world outside looked colorless. Gray walls, barbed wire, and silence so thick you could feel it in your chest. Marcus Alvarez had just been sentenced to 7 years for armed robbery. No one died, but the judge didn't care. The state needed an example. The doors opened. Inside the intake room, Marcus saw men covered in tattoos, staring through him like they could already read his fear. That's when an older inmate named Tony Books Ramirez whispered as they walked down the hall. "Kid, keep your head down. There are 15 rules in here. Break one, and you won't make it to morning." Marcus thought it was just talk, until he learned the first rule the hard way. Never show fear. That night, Marcus watched a fight break out over a piece of cornbread. One man hesitated, stepped back, and instantly, the others swarmed him. In less than a minute, the man's tray, seat, and respect were gone. Tony leaned close and murmured, "That's what fear smells like here. Once they see it, they own you." From that moment, Marcus forced himself to eat steady, eyes forward, hands still, even though every muscle in his body was shaking. Respect is currency. 2 days later, Marcus accidentally brushed shoulders with Diesel, a 260-pound inmate built like a brick wall. Diesel spun around, voice low and sharp. "You touch me again, new fish, you're done." The whole hall went silent. Marcus didn't flinch. He nodded once. "My bad. No excuses. No backtalk. Just respect." Diesel stared him down, then cracked a small grin and walked off. Tony smirked from behind. "Congrats, kid. You just bought yourself a day of peace. Stay out of prison politics." The next morning, guards dragged an inmate from C Block. The man's face was wrapped in a towel, soaked in red. Marcus whispered, "What happened?" Tony didn't even look up from his book. Wrong side, wrong favor. Don't ask. Don't look. Don't care. That's when Marcus realized survival wasn't about being strong. It was about being invisible. The turning point. By the end of his first week, Marcus was moved into general population, where the real power lived. And that's where he met Reaper, the man who'd later hold him by the throat in the yard. Reaper stared at Marcus through the bars, a slow grin spreading across his scarred face. "New meat, huh? Let's see how many rules you know." Marcus said nothing, just looked back, calm on the outside, though his pulse was thundering inside. Reaper chuckled. "You'll learn. Everyone does. One way or another." The cell door slammed shut. The first week inside Stonegate had changed Marcus. He no longer walked like a rookie. His steps were slower, heavier, eyes scanning every corner before moving. The fear was still there, buried deep, but he had learned how to hide it. Reaper had been watching him since day one. The man didn't just control C Block, he owned it. Nothing moved without his approval. The guards feared him just as much as the inmates did. Marcus tried to stay invisible, but inside Stonegate, silence often looked like defiance. One afternoon, during yard time, Reaper approached. His crew, 3 lifers with dead eyes, followed a few steps behind. Reaper stopped in front of Marcus and said quietly, "You've been keeping to yourself. Smart. But you'll need protection eventually. Everyone does." Marcus didn't answer. He could feel Tony's eyes from across the yard, silently telling him, "Don't make promises. Don't owe anyone anything." Reaper smirked. "You'll come around. Everyone does." Then he walked off, leaving Marcus to wonder what kind of price came with protection in this place. That night, Marcus returned to his cell to find a piece of folded paper on his bed. No name, no message, just a symbol, a skull with a crown. He looked at Tony. Tony sighed. That's Reaper's mark. It means he's giving you a chance to join his crew. You don't answer, it means disrespect. Marcus frowned. And if I do, then you're owned. For good. He stared at the paper for hours before tearing it in half. The next morning, Reaper's crew made sure Marcus knew what that decision meant. They cornered him in the laundry room. For men, silent, no witnesses. Marcus barely had time to raise his hands before the first punch landed. He fought back with everything he had, but he was outnumbered, overpowered. Blood ran from his lip as he hit the ground. Suddenly, a voice shouted from behind them. Tony Books, Ramirez stepped in, holding nothing but a mop handle. That's enough, Tony barked. He's with me. Reaper's crew paused. Tony wasn't strong, but he was respected, and in Stonegate, respect was power. After a long silence, the men backed off. Marcus sat on the floor, gasping. Tony tossed him a rag and said, You're learning fast, kid. You just found out the price of staying independent. For days after the fight, the tension in C Block grew. Reaper didn't like being defied, especially by a newcomer. Whispers spread. Some said Marcus was brave, others said he was stupid. Tony warned him, You can't survive here alone forever. You'll need people. Just make sure they need you too. It was then Marcus started paying attention to how the prison actually worked. Every meal, every favor, every word had value. A pack of cigarettes could buy peace. A helping hand could buy loyalty. And when Marcus helped an older inmate fix the wiring in the kitchen, he accidentally earned himself a new kind of currency, usefulness. The older inmates started calling him Stone because nothing seemed to shake him anymore. Weeks passed. Then one night, the cell doors opened for a surprise inspection. Guards stormed in, tearing through bunks, searching for contraband. When they reached Marcus's cell, they found a blade hidden under his mattress. He froze. It wasn't his. He'd never seen it before. But the guards didn't care. They cuffed him and dragged him out as Tony shouted, It's a setup. That's Reaper's doing. Marcus was thrown into solitary confinement, a 6-by-8-foot cell where silence screamed louder than words. He had plenty of time to think, and one truth hit harder than any punch. In Stonegate, survival wasn't just about following rules. It was about learning who wrote them. When he finally got out of solitary, Reaper was waiting for him in the hallway. Told you, rookie, Reaper said with a grin. Everyone learns the rules, one way or another. Marcus looked him dead in the eye. Then I guess it's time I write some of my own. Reaper laughed as Marcus walked past, but that laughter didn't last long. Because the next move Marcus made would shift the balance of power inside Stonegate forever. The day Marcus walked out of solitary, everything felt different. The walls looked the same, cracked, gray, and lifeless, but something inside him had shifted. He was done playing defense. Word spread fast through Stonegate. Marcus Stone Alvarez had stood up to Reaper and survived. That didn't make him safe. It made him a threat. Tony warned him, You're on a clock now, kid. Reaper doesn't forget. You need a plan, or you won't make it to next month. Marcus already had one. He wasn't strong enough to fight Reaper head-on, but he'd learned something in solitary. In prison, information was the real weapon. He started small. Working in the kitchen gave him access to people, to schedules, to whispers. He learned who owed who, which guards were taking bribes, and who smuggled in contraband through the laundry carts. He shared pieces of that information with the right people, just enough to earn trust without giving himself away. In a place where everyone lied, Marcus started building a reputation for telling the truth. And in Stonegate, truth was rarer than gold. Weeks later, during a shift, Tony pulled Marcus aside. Word is, Reaper's planning something. Said you embarrassed him. He wants to make an example out of you in front of everyone. Marcus didn't even blink. Then we make an example out of him first. Tony stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You don't go after Reaper. You survive him. But Marcus wasn't thinking about surviving anymore. He was thinking about ending the game. That night, he made his move. He slipped a note into the hands of a guard, one of the corrupt ones he'd been feeding small favors to. The note listed the cell numbers of Reaper's crew and what they were hiding under their bunks. When the 5 a.m. shakedown came, Stonegate erupted. Guards dragged out Reaper's men one by one. Shanks, pills, even stolen keys. All found exactly where Marcus said they'd be. Reaper watched from the yard as his empire collapsed. He knew Marcus had done it, but he couldn't prove it. For the first time, Marcus saw fear in the eyes of the man who once ruled everything. That same afternoon, Tony met Marcus in the mess hall. "You just turned Stonegate upside down," he said quietly. "You understand what comes next, right?" Marcus nodded. "Yeah. I've got maybe a week before Reaper finds a way to hit back. So we use that week." Tony frowned. "Use it for what?" Marcus looked around the room, at the tired faces, the broken men just trying to make it to another sunrise. To change the rules. The plan came together faster than anyone expected. Marcus knew who the informants were. He knew which guards played both sides. And he knew something else. Everyone, even the toughest inmate, wanted one thing: a fair shot at peace. He started uniting small groups. Men who didn't know loyalty to Reaper, who were sick of being bullied by his crew. Little by little, the yard began to shift. Conversations got quieter. Deals started happening without Reaper's approval. It was a slow burn, a silent rebellion. And Reaper could feel it slipping from his grip. One night, as the lights flickered out for lockdown, Marcus heard a whisper from the darkness of his cell. It wasn't Tony. It was Reaper. "You think you're clever, Stone?" Reaper hissed. "You think you can rewrite how this place works? You forgot the last rule: no one walks out clean." Marcus didn't move. "Maybe, but I'll walk out alive." The silence stretched. Then Reaper's voice disappeared back into the dark. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He knew the war had just begun. 3 days after Reaper's warning, the first blade was found, hidden under a water pipe near the showers. By the next morning, 3 more were discovered, and a guard had been attacked in the east corridor. Stonegate went into full lockdown. Every door slammed shut. Every inmate confined to their cell. The air felt heavier, the silence sharper. When a prison that violent goes quiet, everyone knows something bad is coming. Marcus sat on his bunk, staring at the cracked ceiling. Tony looked at him from across the cell. "You did this," Tony said. "Reaper's losing control. He's desperate. Then he's dangerous," Marcus replied. "But that means he's predictable too." For 48 hours, no one left their cells. Food came through metal slots. Guards stopped speaking except for orders. And yet, rumors found a way to travel. Word was, Reaper's men had bribed one of the guards, enough to unlock certain doors when the power went out. Marcus knew what that meant. Reaper was coming for him. On the 3rd night, the lights cut out. Every bulb, every hallway, darkness. Marcus heard it then, faint footsteps, chains rattling, and the sound of steel dragging across concrete. Tony whispered, "They're coming." Marcus gripped the edge of his bunk, counting the seconds in silence. Then, just before the cell door creaked open, a blinding flash filled the block. Emergency lights kicked back on. And standing there wasn't Reaper's crew, it was the guards. They were searching cells at random, barking orders, flipping mattresses, shouting names. But Marcus noticed something strange. They didn't check Reaper's cell. Not once. Tony leaned closer. "You see that? He owns half these guards." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then we stop playing defense. We show everyone the truth." When the lights came back fully, Marcus made his move. He slipped a note under the door of the chaplain's office, the only place Reaper's influence didn't reach. In that note, he listed the names of corrupt guards, their deals, and the evidence hidden in the kitchen's storage bins. By dawn, internal affairs was in Stonegate. The search that followed shook the prison to its core. Guards were handcuffed, boxes of contraband confiscated, and 2 officers escorted out under federal investigation. For the first time, Reaper's power cracked. But victory in prison is never clean. When someone loses control, someone else pays the price. That same day, Tony was found unconscious in the yard, beaten, ribs broken, face swollen. Marcus was dragged away before he could reach him. He shouted at the guards, "You know who did this?" They looked away. Everyone looked away. Tony survived, barely. But the message was clear. Reaper couldn't touch Marcus directly now, so he'd hurt the people around him. Marcus spent the next week in silence, sitting by Tony's bunk, planning his next step. He realized then that prison wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about power, who controlled it, and who could take it back. He thought about every man Reaper had threatened, every inmate who'd lost something to fear. They were all waiting for someone to do what they couldn't. So Marcus stood in the yard one morning, facing Reaper across the cracked concrete. The entire block went still. Even the guards stopped pretending they didn't see. Marcus spoke clearly. "You don't run this place anymore. We all do." Reaper just smiled. "You think the guards care who runs it? You think anyone out there's listening?" Marcus stepped closer. No, but everyone in here is. And for the first time in years, Reaper looked uncertain. That night, Stonegate wasn't silent. Men whispered Marcus's name in the dark, passed it from cell to cell. A new kind of order was forming, not by fear, but by unity. But just as Marcus started to believe change was possible, the sirens wailed again. Another attack. Another stabbing. And this time, the weapon was found in Marcus's cell. When the guards dragged Marcus out of his cell, no one said a word. Not the inmates. Not even Tony, still bruised and bandaged. Everyone knew what it meant when the weapon was found in your bunk. The system had chosen its scapegoat. Marcus didn't resist. He'd learned by now that fighting back only gave them an excuse to beat you worse. He just stared straight ahead as they cuffed his wrists and pushed him through the hallway. He'd been here before. The same cold floors, the same echo of steel gates slamming shut. But this time, it wasn't Reaper behind the setup. It was bigger. Inside the warden's office, Marcus was forced into a chair. Across the desk sat Warden Huxley, a man whose suit was too clean for a place so dirty. "You've caused quite the stir, Alvarez," the warden said. "Information leaks, contraband seizures, guards under investigation. You've made my job complicated." Marcus stayed silent. "We found a weapon in your cell," Huxley continued, "with traces of another inmate's blood. That's an automatic assault charge. 10 more years." Marcus met his eyes. "You planted it." The warden smiled slightly. "No, Alvarez. The system planted it. I'm just the man who signs the papers." Back in his new solitary cell, Marcus's mind spun. He'd outplayed Reaper, but he'd underestimated something worse, the prison itself. Stonegate wasn't just run by inmates or guards. It was run by a chain of favors, silence, and fear that stretched far beyond the walls. Reaper was just one piece. The real power was the machine that kept men like him inside forever. Days passed. No sunlight. No voices. Just the buzz of the fluorescent light that never turned off. Then one morning, a folded note slid under his door. He opened it and froze. It was written in Tony's handwriting. "They're transferring me to infirmary. Reaper's still moving pieces. You've got one shot left, use it." Marcus read it over and over, then tore the page in half and hid it under the thin mattress. He understood. If he stayed silent, they'd bury him quietly. But if he spoke, really spoke, maybe the truth could still burn through the cracks. When the guards came for him again, Marcus asked for one thing: a meeting with the prison chaplain. He knew the chaplain was the only man the warden couldn't easily silence. At first, the guard laughed. "You planning to confess?" Marcus looked him dead in the eye. "No, I'm planning to testify." The meeting was set for the next morning. But that night, something strange happened. A guard Marcus had never seen before slipped him a folded envelope through the slot. Inside was a photograph. It was Tony, lying in the infirmary bed, tubes attached, face pale. And written on the back were 3 words that made Marcus's blood run cold. He didn't make it. Marcus sat still, staring at the picture. The man who'd saved his life, who'd taught him how to survive, was gone. The system had made its move and taken the only person Marcus trusted. He spent hours pacing, heart pounding, fury rising. He'd try to play the game by the rules, but the rules were never meant for him. By dawn, he'd made a decision. No more silence. No more waiting. If they wanted him gone, he'd go out telling everyone why. When they led him to the chapel, he didn't kneel or pray. He looked straight at the chaplain and said, "You want a confession? I'll give you one." He told him everything. The smuggled contraband, the bribed guards, the setups, the beatings, the system that rewarded corruption while pretending to correct it. The chaplain didn't speak, just took notes, his expression unreadable. When Marcus finished, he said quietly, "If you walk out of this room, you'll be marked." Marcus nodded. "Then I'll make sure they remember my name." 2 days later, Internal Affairs was back in Stonegate again. Whispers spread that the warden's office had been searched. Files seized. The story Marcus told had reached the outside. But so had his name. By nightfall, every inmate knew that Marcus Stone Alvarez was the man who'd exposed the system. Some called him a hero. Others called him a dead man walking. And Reaper? He just smiled from his cell and said to one of his men, "Told you. Nobody walks out clean." For 3 days, the prison buzzed with a silence that didn't feel natural. Everyone knew what was coming. You could feel it in the air, like thunder before a storm. Marcus had exposed everything: the guards, the smuggling, the lies. The warden's office was under investigation. Reaper's control was slipping, and the men of Stonegate were watching, waiting for the first crack in the walls. Then, on the fourth night, the power went out. The darkness was absolute. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of breathing and the faint scrape of metal on concrete. Then someone shouted, and all hell broke loose. Doors swung open. Fires lit up the corridors. Shouts turned to roars as hundreds of inmates poured into the halls, breaking through everything that had kept them caged. It wasn't just violence, it was rage. Years of beatings, silence, and fear bursting all at once. Marcus stood in the chaos, watching as the flames reflected off the steel bars. He could have run. He could have hidden. But he didn't. Tony's words echoed in his mind. There are 15 rules, kid. Break one, you won't make it to morning. Marcus had broken them all, and somehow, he was still standing. In the middle of the chaos, Reaper appeared. Face streaked with sweat, eyes wild, a sharpened piece of steel in his hand. He walked straight toward Marcus, smiling like he'd been waiting for this moment all along. You started this, Reaper said. You think you burned the system? You just gave it an excuse to bury us all. Marcus didn't answer. He knew Reaper was right, but that didn't matter anymore. This wasn't about winning. It was about ending it. The two men circled each other, surrounded by the roar of the riot. Every inmate in that block stopped moving. It was like the whole prison was holding its breath. Reaper lunged first, fast, brutal, desperate. Marcus dodged, grabbed his arm, slammed him into the bars. The weapon clattered to the ground. Reaper swung again, catching Marcus across the face, opening a deep cut along his cheek. Marcus fell back, dizzy, blood in his eyes, but he didn't go down. He tackled Reaper, pinning him against the floor. For a moment, neither moved. Just the sound of shouting echoing through the halls. Then Marcus whispered, "You were right. Nobody walks out clean." He released him, stood, and walked away. Reaper didn't follow. By morning, the National Guard surrounded Stonegate. The riot had lasted 6 hours. Half the facility was in ruins. Dozens injured. 3 dead. Marcus sat in the yard as the sun came up, wrists cuffed again, eyes fixed on the smoke rising from the rooftops. A guard, one he didn't recognize, crouched next to him. You Alvarez? Marcus nodded. The guard hesitated, then said quietly, Warden's gone. Resigned overnight. Federal agents are taking over. You did this. Marcus looked at the destruction around him. The broken fences, the burned towers, the men lying in the dirt. He didn't smile. No, he said softly. We all did. He was transferred that same day to a federal holding facility for his own safety. No one spoke to him during transport. When he looked out the small barred window, Stonegate was just a shape behind smoke and sunlight, like it was fading out of existence. Inside, the other inmates started a rumor. Marcus Stone Alvarez wasn't real. Just a story, a ghost of Stonegate. A reminder of what happens when one man decides not to play by the rules anymore. The day Marcus Alvarez walked out of Stonegate, the world felt too quiet. No alarms, no shouting, no steel doors, just wind, sunlight, and the sound of his own heartbeat. He was 38. He'd spent almost half his life behind bars. Now, they handed him a small bag with his name on it. One change of clothes, $20, and a bus ticket to nowhere. The guard who walked him out said, You're a free man now, Alvarez. Marcus didn't answer, because freedom didn't feel like what he thought it would. It felt empty. The bus ride was long. Every tree, every open field looked unreal, like he was watching a movie he didn't belong in. People glanced at him, but didn't stare. They couldn't tell who he was, and for the first time, Marcus realized how invisible ex-cons really were. When he reached the halfway house in the city, a woman from parole handed him a list of rules. 15 of them. He stared at the paper. 15 rules. Different words, same system. Follow these, Alvarez, she said. You might actually make it. He smiled faintly. I've heard that before. The halfway house was clean but cold. Men with blank eyes. All trying to start over, but not knowing how. Marcus kept his head down, got a job at a warehouse, and checked in with parole every week. No fights. No problems. No noise. But the ghosts of Stonegate followed him everywhere. Every siren made him flinch. Every closed door made his chest tighten. And every time he saw someone in a uniform, he felt like he was back inside. One night, while walking home from work, Marcus saw a group of kids spray painting a wall. They laughed when they saw him watching. One of them, Maybe 16, shouted. What you looking at, old man? Marcus didn't answer. He just walked away. But then he stopped, turned back, and said quietly, You think this is a game? You ever seen what happens when that gate closes behind you? The kid froze. The others went silent. There was something in Marcus's voice, not anger, but truth. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just told them what Stonegate was really like. The fear, the loneliness, the rules you live by just to see the next sunrise. When he finished, the boys walked away without a word. And for the first time since leaving prison, Marcus felt like maybe, just maybe, his story could mean something. Weeks passed. A reporter reached out, someone investigating the corruption that had destroyed Stonegate. They'd heard whispers about Marcus's role in the riot, about the files he'd leaked, the warden's resignation. At first, he refused. He didn't want fame. He wanted peace. But then he remembered Tony. The promise they made in that cold cell. If one of us makes it out, tell the truth. So he agreed. The interview went viral. Millions of views in days. People around the country were shocked by what they heard. The truth about Stonegate, the guards, the setup, the silence. For the first time, Marcus's name wasn't tied to a mugshot. It was tied to change. But freedom has a cost. And the past doesn't stay buried forever. One evening, Marcus came home to find an envelope taped to his door. No name, no address, just one line written in rough handwriting. Stonegate wasn't the end. Watch your back. Inside was a photo, Reaper, standing in a different prison yard, staring straight at the camera. And on the back, 3 words, I'm coming home. Marcus sat in the small room of his halfway house, staring at the photo of Reaper. The message on the back burned in his mind. I'm coming home. He hadn't seen that face in almost 2 years. The cold eyes, the scar that cut through his jaw, the look of someone who'd survived too long on hate. Marcus had exposed the truth, yes, but that also meant he'd made enemies in every corner of the system. And Reaper was one who never forgot. For days, Marcus couldn't sleep. He walked to work, ate, talked to no one. Every time someone passed him on the street, he checked their face. Every sound at night made him reach for the small knife he kept hidden in his dresser, not for violence, but for survival. Then, one afternoon, it happened. He was walking home from the warehouse when a black car slowed beside him. The window rolled down, and a familiar voice said, You look softer out here, Stone. Marcus froze. Reaper was behind the wheel, older, thinner, but still dangerous. He smiled like a man who'd been waiting for this moment since the day the gates opened. Relax, Reaper said. I'm not here for that. Not yet. Then what do you want? Marcus asked. A reminder. You and me, we're not done. You took Stonegate from me. I'm going to take your world from you. The car drove off, leaving Marcus standing on the side of the road, heart pounding. He realized then that freedom didn't mean escape. It just meant a bigger battlefield. That night, Marcus called his parole officer, told him about the threat. The man sighed. Unless he touches you, there's nothing we can do. He served his time. Same as you. Same as you. The words hit harder than a punch. Marcus hung up, realizing the truth. The system that locked him up still didn't care if he lived or died. Weeks went by. Marcus tried to stay focused on work, tried to keep clean. But strange things started happening. His boss got an anonymous call accusing Marcus of stealing. A neighbor reported him for suspicious activity. His parole officer suddenly demanded weekly drug tests, though Marcus had never failed one. Bit by bit, his life was collapsing, and he knew exactly who was behind it. Reaper wasn't attacking with fists or blades anymore. He was using the same thing Marcus once used to survive, the rules. One night, Marcus came home to find his room trashed. Drawers open, clothes torn, the photo of Tony gone. He searched every corner, his heart sinking deeper with every overturned item. Then, he found a single piece of paper taped to the wall. It said, Rule 15, never forget where you came from. Reaper's handwriting. Marcus sat on the bed, staring at the message. He realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about control. Reaper wasn't just coming for him. He was dragging Marcus back to the one place he'd fought to escape, the mindset of Stonegate. The next day, Marcus went to the old community center where he'd been volunteering, helping ex-inmates find work. He wasn't supposed to be there that day, but something told him to go anyway. When he walked in, the place was quiet. Too quiet. He called out. No answer. Then he heard a voice behind him. You keep trying to save them, Stone. but you can't save what's already broken. Marcus turned. Reaper stood in the doorway, unarmed, but dangerous in every way that mattered. You burned Stonegate, Reaper said. Now I'm burning your second chance. Marcus didn't move. He could see in Reaper's eyes, this wasn't about a fight. It was about ending something that started years ago behind steel bars. You can walk away, Reaper, Marcus said. You walked away once, Reaper replied. Now it's my turn to make sure you never do again. Before Marcus could speak, Reaper walked out, just vanished into the streets. No one saw him again that night. But the next morning, the police were outside the halfway house. Someone had called in a tip, a knife found in the alley behind the warehouse, with Marcus's fingerprints on it. Marcus woke to the sound of sirens. The flashing red and blue lights painted his small apartment in angry streaks. He knew immediately someone had called it in. The police didn't knock. They didn't ask questions. They cuffed him, shoved him into the squad car, and drove. No explanations. No warnings. Just the cold reality he'd already known. The world outside was just another prison. At the station, they booked him on charges of assault and possession of a deadly weapon. The knife found in the alley behind the warehouse had his fingerprints. He tried to explain he hadn't touched it, but the officers didn't listen. Evidence, they said, spoke for itself. And Marcus realized the truth. Someone had set him up. Reaper, he muttered under his breath. In the holding cell, Marcus sat silently. The room smelled of bleach, fear, and desperation. He replayed every moment from the day before, walking to the warehouse, seeing Reaper's shadow in the street, the knife, planted. Tony's words echoed in his mind. The rules don't end outside the walls. Marcus had survived Stonegate. He had survived solitary, beatings, riots, and betrayal. And now, for the first time, he understood the rules of freedom. Information was power. Silence could kill you. Trust no one completely. By mid-afternoon, Marcus's lawyer arrived, a young woman who had been following the Stonegate story from the outside. They're trying to bury you, she said. Evidence planted. Witnesses disappearing. You don't have much time. Marcus nodded. He already had a plan. He had spent years learning how to read people, how to survive when everyone wanted you dead. Now he was going to use those skills outside the prison walls. Step 1. Find Reaper. He needed proof. A confession, a trace, anything that could show this was a setup. Marcus remembered the photo taped to his door. The address on the back, a halfway house across town. That night, he slipped out of the holding area under the cover of darkness. He moved fast, blending into the city streets, every instinct from prison kicking in. No one saw him. No one stopped him. He reached the location from the photo, an abandoned warehouse near the docks. Inside, he found evidence of Reaper's network, stacks of fake IDs, envelopes with threats, and letters detailing the plan to frame Marcus. He realized Reaper wasn't just a man anymore. He was an organization, a network of ex-cons, corrupt officials, and anyone still loyal to the name Stonegate. And then he heard the voice. You really think you can sneak in here, Stone? Reaper stepped out of the shadows, calm, confident, unarmed, but radiating danger. I told you, he said. Freedom doesn't exist for men like us. You want your second chance? You have to earn it by surviving me again. Marcus didn't hesitate. He lunged, grabbed a folder of evidence, and ran. Reaper followed, but Marcus was fast. Every sprint, every corner, every breath trained from years inside Stonegate guiding him. Outside, the city lights blurred as Marcus disappeared into the alleyways. He wasn't just running. He was surviving. And this time, it was personal. By dawn, Marcus had reached a safe house, a contact from his Stonegate days who owed him a favor. He laid out everything. The frame-up, the warehouse, Reaper's plan. Tony's voice came back to him in his memory. You never fight alone, even when you think you do. Marcus smiled faintly. He had allies. He had evidence. And now, he had one goal: turn the trap around. Marcus had spent years learning the rules of survival behind bars. Now he was using the same lessons outside Stonegate. The difference? This time, the enemy didn't have walls to hide behind. He gathered his allies, a small group of ex-inmates and contacts from his halfway house days. People who owed favors and knew how the system really worked. Together, they traced every move Reaper had made. The fake evidence, the planted witnesses, even the corrupt officials who were on Reaper's payroll. Step 1. Cut off Reaper's protection. Marcus leaked evidence of Reaper's network to federal authorities, proof of bribes, threats, and multiple criminal setups. Within days, Reaper's contacts were under investigation. Offices raided. Communications monitored. Step 2. Bait Reaper into the open. Marcus used his knowledge of the city, the docks, the warehouses, the abandoned streets, and left clues designed to draw Reaper out. It worked. The confrontation was inevitable. Reaper waited at an abandoned warehouse, thinking Marcus would be alone. Instead, Marcus had every angle covered. Allies hiding in shadows, cameras rolling, authorities ready. When Reaper walked in, confident and unafraid, Marcus stepped forward. "It ends tonight," he said. Reaper smirked. "You think you can take me down?" Marcus didn't answer. He just activated the lights, cameras on every corner. Authorities moved in, surrounding Reaper and his men. There was no fight, no chaos, no escape. Just the law catching up to the man who had haunted Marcus for years. Reaper was arrested. His network dismantled. Every setup, every threat, every frame, exposed. Marcus finally stood outside, looking at the city skyline. The weight of Stonegate, of solitary, of every fight, and every rule, lifted slightly from his shoulders. He was free, not just from prison walls, but from the fear that had followed him for a decade. For Marcus, survival had always been about rules. Don't show fear. Respect everyone. Know who holds power. Trust no one blindly. Always plan your next move. He had broken the old rules and made new ones. Outside the prison, outside the chaos, and now in his own life. The past would always be a part of him, but Marcus Stone Alvarez had learned the final lesson. Survival isn't just about living. It's about taking control of your story. From the brutal yards of Stonegate to the streets outside, Marcus's journey proves one thing. The rules of survival never stop, no matter where you are. If you've been on the edge of your seat through this story, drop a fire in the comments. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because real stories like this remind us the world is full of rules, and only the clever survive. And remember, whether behind bars or on the streets, it's not just about living. It's about surviving smart, staying aware, and never letting anyone else write your story. Marcus survived. Could you?